Hey everybody, Quantum here, and as per the title and thumbnail of this video, we are going to be taking a look at what Emerald Steel looks like after the BUCKY errata, making the BUCKY discard Emerald Steel deck virtually unplayable. This is the list I'm going to be using. Look at the timestamp if you just want to jump straight to the match, but the deck list is pretty straightforward. We're still on the Diablo 1 with Diablo 3 shift, so 4 copies of each of those. We're opting for Captain Hooks just as additional ways to slow aggro down potentially. Still on Ursula Deceiver. On Mr. Smeeze, this was played in set 3, not in set 4 BUCKY discard because it wasn't a Floodborn. Back on the Prince John, arguably one of the most powerful cards in the game right now. Absolutely a monstrous card. Why did it switch my view there? That's weird. Anyways, let's go back. On 4 Ursula Deceiver of all, 2 Lucifers back in the deck, and 3 Beast Tragic Heroes. You can maybe opt to fiddle around with this list a little bit, but overall I think this is a pretty effective list. 3 Babooms, because again, Captain Hook on 1, Baboom on 2 is a way to check, aggro threats, mainly Daisy Duck dealing 5 damage to it or something like that, or whatever they drop on 2. And then your songs you're quite heavy on. 4 Sudden Chill, 4 Let the Storm Rage On, 4 Strength of a Raging Fire, 2 You're Welcome. This is another new card that we got in Shimmering Skies. It's basically Yzma on a song. Shuffle a chosen character, item, or location. So I think Yzma's only characters though. So this card has a little bit more versatility in outing items or locations. Shuffle it into the player's deck and that player draws 2 cards. This is really relevant for 2 reasons, because you can target your own stuff and draw 2, or you can target a really big important threat your opponent might play, let's say like a Lucky Dime, and it doesn't discard it to the discard pile, right, where they can get it back with a Tamato. It puts it back into their deck, so they have to hard draw it or find it once again in order to play it out. A pretty useful card. I ordered like 5 foil copies of this because I do think this card is fantastic, and you're actually going to see it in action if you come and watch the, or stay and watch the gameplay video that we're going to show in just a moment here. And then finally, the main reason why I wanted to test out Emerald Steel, see if it's still viable, is because of Prince John Mirror. This card looks to be insanely powerful. I mentioned this in like my initial Shimmering Skies review, that this card checking opponents into keeping only 3 cards in their hand would potentially be a Ruby Amethyst killer. You'll be very surprised at what happens in our matches if you, again, stay tuned and watch. But I do think this is a strong card. I do think it's a huge asset to the Emerald Steel deck. And this deck, the discard version, is not dead by any means. Just because Bucky's gone doesn't mean that this deck is any, well, I mean, it's fundamentally changed, but it's still an extremely powerful deck. But enough talking, let's go ahead and jump into a match. Or I guess what we can do is, sorry, just give me 1 second here, guys. I'm going to show you what we're playing against, because I'm actually playing against myself. I have spotty internet right now because there's construction in my area, so my internet's cutting in and out all the time. But I'm going up against my Ruby Amethyst Chromacon list, is what I call it. And this list is pretty good into like other decks, but against discard decks, which is a tough match for Ruby Amethyst generally, this list is actually terrible in my opinion. So it kind of sucks to call my own list terrible, but it is from my testing. If that's not a hint as to what's to come, then I guess you'll kind of see it in a second. But this list, it's decent. You still have 1-drops to proc these Madam Mim Snake onto if you want. I like the reintroduction of Cusco over things like the Flynn Rider into set 5 meta, but again, we can see how things might shape up. Flynn Rider might still be super meta. No big Sisu. Instead, we're on Madam Mim and Crabs, which again, you can argue is a misplay, but I wanted more strength modulating effects for things like the Elsa. I just wanted to kind of go all in on making this Elsa as good as possible, because with an additional Mim, two additional Mims, so now you have 10 Mims total, you can bounce this Elsa a number of times and just keep proccing the tap down ability. And then the Goats and the Rabbits, I think, are just continued staples in the deck. At this point, you have to play 4 of each. They're just too good not to play. And then, of course, 4 Mauis and then 3 Medusas, which, you can argue you might not need to play these, but I think they're still pretty good. And then 3 Barl. The issue with all of these cards and the Teeth and Ambitions that I've teched in is that none of these can check Prince John. And historically, Prince John is a card that gave this deck a lot of trouble. This deck could play into the BUCKY discard deck, because the BUCKY discard deck usually discarded 1 or maybe 2 cards at most per turn, and you can definitely outdraw that, especially when you were playing Queen's Castle. Now with all of the expected location hate coming in Steel and Sapphire decks with Cusco and Simba, you don't really want to risk playing a castle just to have it outed right away by one of those cards where they get a body instead, especially on the Cusco side where they're able to have a 2-questing body. Sometimes the ramp can help you if you're playing on curve, but in general, like, it's not great to just get your castle outed right away. So these cards not being able to target the Prince John is a bit of a problem. We're still on 4 friends. The reason I like Teeth and Ambitions, by the way, guys, if you're not aware, is because it goes well with the Madam Mim, plus it's just extra removal, and then with the introduction of Cusco, I can use the Cusco to sing and banish it and draw a card too. So a lot of potential card draw in this deck, as well as damage moving with the Madam Mim, especially if I can put the Teeth on the Madam. So that's really good. And then 2 King Undisputed, only 3 Be Prepareds, and then 4 Chromacons. I'd probably cut this to 3, just 4s, or even 2, if you wanted to build a Chromacon oriented build, because if you're playing Crabs plus Chromacons, like, it's probably just too much proccing of strength, just for 1 card in Elsa, but you know, it has other applications. Anyways, let's go ahead and jump into the match, or matches, and see how the matchup goes. So as I mentioned, I'm going to be playing both decks basically, but it's kind of nice because you can kind of see the mulligan choices and the hands and the lines of play that we potentially have. Opening up though, we're going to try to mulligan for a 3-drop Diablo, so I put back a bunch of songs, keeping the strength, keeping the Let the Storm Rage On, because it's probably the better song in the early game. Again, I'm going in assuming that I don't know what my opponent is playing. Same with this Ruby Amethyst mulligan. We have a Chromacon on 1 or a Cogsworth if we draw into a Madam Mim snake and we need to go that line. But being the Ruby Amethyst player, we're going to be on the play, and the Emerald Steel player is going to be on the draw. So I probably opt to establish the Chromacon first. So we're going to ink Goat, play Chromacon, and pass. As the Emerald Steel player, you're happy, right, to see this line of play happen and that you're against Ruby Amethyst. We draw into another Let the Storm Rage On, which is great. We're going to go ahead and ink and play out the Diablo. They see our hand, which means they know that we have the Teeth and Ambitions, which is unfortunate because I do make a misplay here, but you'll see kind of what happens. And despite the misplay, yeah, we still, are not in a bad position. So I drop a Boom here. And because I played Diablo on 1, I know they have a Teeth and Ambitions in their hand, or I should, right? But I think I was just playing too fast. I'm going to opt to shift Diablo here and Quest, right? I discarded one of my 2 Let the Storm Rage Ons, and I end up passing. But obviously I should have, here you see me saying it, like, I should have baboomed there. Why didn't I do that? I'm not saying that in the match, but I'm assuming that I drew the Teeth and Ambitions for turn or something, and I didn't see it with the Diablo. But I draw when they draw, right? So you get the 1 extra draw off the Diablo there. But now I'm going to be able to start the turn off with singing a Teeth and Ambitions. And I believe that even though I out the Diablo, because I proc the Cusco draw, it allows the opponent to still draw the card because the Diablo hasn't resolved in the discard yet. Let me know if that's incorrect. And they don't get the extra draw there. But anyways, we're going to just go ahead and hard cast Friends on the other side because we don't really have a better turn 3 play. And then we pass play back to the Emerald Steel player. So yeah, I definitely would have been booming that Cusco to prevent them from playing or singing Teeth and Ambitions there, which means my Diablo would just get tons of extra value and would still be alive right now. And just put them behind tempo-wise, right? And giving them cards in their hand, like this is how much of a misplay that was. Giving them extra cards in their hand as the Emerald Steel discard player is actually good for me. So as the Emerald Steel discard player, so I would want to actually just slow them down as much as possible, disrupt their tempo, and keep my Diablo on board. So the fact that I didn't do that is like a big misplay, looking back here at it now. But again, that's the power of hand knowledge, right? If you're a Yu-Gi-Oh player, you know how important hand knowledge can be. Anyways, not having a great play. We just play out a Cogsworth, bounce it back with the Mim Fox there to drop a Mim Fox on board. Because I have a Prince John in play, my Prince John Mirror costs me 1 less, meaning it costs 2. And the draw of the Smee here is really nice. So we're going to be able to drop Smee and the Prince John Mirror on turn 4. And now we have some pressure. I am under threat of making sure I have 3 cards or less. But as you can see here, when we are on the play, it's actually not too hard to just be on 3 cards by turn 5, basically, on our turn 5, right? Because they would likely play Prince John Mirror on turn 4, because if they have a Prince John, they want to play that in turn 3 instead of the item. But this is maybe an interaction where you would say, instead of playing the Prince John, I just hard cast the item for 3 to force the discard if you don't play multiple interactions, right? And then I play the Prince John on the following turn. I don't know. It's a couple of things to consider there. But on this turn, we play the Elsa, exert the Smee, and use the Fox to take out the Smee. That's what happened there, if you were wondering. The Prince John can't be targeted because it has Ward. So when I pass back play with the Elsa only on board, I draw into another Prince John Mirror. I ink it because, we know that Ruby Amethyst has no way to deal with items. We only need 1 Prince John Mirror in rotation here, so we can ink all the rest. We opt to play an Ursula Deceiver of All and pass the turn back here. So we untap, we draw a Snake, which is, pretty interesting here. The Teeth and Ambitions in this scenario isn't doing enough And this is one of the reasons why you could argue maybe cut back on the teeth by like one and play 4 brawls. Because yeah, it's really unfortunate into this matchup. We're gonna go ahead and ink the teeth that we drew though, and play the goat, because at this point with the opponent drawing through so many cards already, I would imagine they're on or would have an Ursula Deceiver to rip the teeth. And sure enough, look at that! Like, I made my own prediction come true. We do end up drawing into an Ursula Deceiver. But I'm going to start the turn off with double singing, Let the Storm Rage On. Still an absolutely broken interaction, 3 or 2 sets later. We're going to put 2 damage on both the characters on board because we know we have a strength to take out the relevant one depending on what we draw. So that's why I don't double up on one character, because I'm still going to take out one character with the strength potentially. We draw into a Lucifer, and this is the kind of combination and the pressure you put on your opponent. They can't have more than 3 cards in hand. So whatever little cards they have left because of the Prince John Mirror, when we eventually draw that very powerful discard, we're going to be able to drop it. So instead of playing the Ursula Deceiver, I just play the Lucifer and force the discard of both the final cards instead of taking a peek and hopefully hitting a song. So absolutely decimates the Ruby Amethyst player here. And then we ink the Ursula Deceiver because now we just feel like we're in total control. We've got a bit of a board presence. And we can take control of the opponent's board very shortly. We don't even need to hard cast the strength. We can kind of wait a little bit. We do draw into a fox, and this would normally be one of the better top decks we could get if we had enough ink to play fox and replay the goat. Unfortunately, we do not. So we quest with goat. I think I gained the lore there. We bounce back the goat, and I gained the lore back later. I do realize I didn't gain the lore for bringing the goat back to hand there. But the fox will take out the Deceiver, and then the Elsa will quest with its evasive ability. The Ruby Chromacon in this matchup, as you can tell, is absolutely doing nothing. It's not meant for this kind of matchup. It's meant for more mid-range matchups. So, if you really want to tech Ruby Amethyst against some of your worst matchups, like against Emerald decks still, you definitely would want to opt for a different build than this Chromacon build, I think, or just go, like I said, 2 or so on the Chromacons. You don't need 4 by any means. But yeah, we end up having to ink the goat there, which again, it feels terrible not being able to replay it. Pass back to the opponent. Now they have a couple of decisions to make. Am I thinking to Baboom here, maybe the fox? But then I opt not to. I just pay 1 to hard cast the Captain Hook, and then I pay 2 to Baboom, and I Baboom the fox. Because now I have 3 characters on board, which means I can use my final 3 ink to hard cast the strength to deal 3 damage to the Elsa and take it out. And so just like that, I have board presence. The opponent has nothing in hand, nothing on board, and I still have a Prince John that I can play next turn for additional questing pressure. Prince John being able to quest for 2 as well, it has no business questing for 2. Like, that's just really embarrassing. Not embarrassing, but just like really, really strong. We top deck a goat, we drop it, right? Not really much we can do here. We draw to yet another mirror, so that's probably instant ink. We're gonna go ahead and play our second John just to continue to pile on the pressure. And yes, we are playing into a Be Prepared, actually quite heavily playing into a Be Prepared. But at this point, if they Be Prepared, I guess we're not feeling too bad. We're going to ink the third Prince John mirror that we've seen in this matchup. So you can see like Prince John's mirror didn't actually do anything in terms of like forcing me into any lines of play because I was naturally already having 3 cards in hand. And without castle and without additional ways to like generate lore, put pressure on the opponent, get card advantage, force the opponent to deal with the castle by exerting and whatnot, it becomes a bit of a tough matchup. And you can argue that when you looked at my deck list, instead of like Beast Tragic Hero, maybe I should be running things like the Simba so that I have a direct way to deal with the castle. But anyways, we end up just having to Teeth and Crash Goat in order to deal with the opponent's board. They top deck a Lucifer, so they just play it as, again, more questing pressure. We top deck a Chromacon here, which is absolutely terrible. And now we're on the cusp of losing the game. We top deck the new song, You're Welcome. And at this point, the game is pretty much over, but I think I just go ahead and try to show you guys the interaction here. So we're going to quest with the Lucifer. You can argue I should have You're Welcomed the Captain Hook instead, but at this point I'm already very close to winning the game, so I'm not too concerned. We're going to You're Welcome back the Lucifer, though, after we quest with it, and I'm just reading to make sure I shuffle the deck. I don't just like put it on the bottom and draw 2. And it is a Yzma effect. You do put it into the deck, shuffle the deck, and then draw. Which is good to like shuffle the deck because your Ursula Deceiver putting those songs at the bottom. Now those songs get shuffled back. Speaking of which, our draw 2 reveals an Ursula Deceiver of All and a Diablo. We're going to be able to play out that Deceiver of All, and now we're threatening game next turn. The opponent needs to top deck Be Prepared here. They do not. They do get a Rabbit though, which is really nice, but again, it's too little too late. So the draw into the Snake to bounce back Rabbit, get an additional draw there, but again, nothing we can do, and we just end up losing that match to Emerald Steel, even though we were on the play. And the Prince John's Mirror didn't really affect us. We weren't forced to discard off of it, but it really did keep us in check from potentially coming back and building up a hand. So let's go ahead and take a look at match number 2. Alright guys, for game 2, the Ruby Amethyst player is also going to be going first. We're kind of considering this a best of 3. So now that we know we're up against Emerald Steel, we still want to do our best to play on curve, but the Chernobog Followers here is a much better 1-drop than the Chromacon. So you can argue saying that like the Chromacon would be ink in this matchup more or less, since we don't need that extra strength boost. We do find the Cusco, but unfortunately we do also find a Be Prepared, of which we only play 3 if you watch the start of that video, of this video that is. So seeing that in our opening hand against Emerald is really bad because we know it's potentially Deceiver rippable, and it's a dead card in our hand for the first couple of turns. Our opening hand on the Emerald Steel side is absolutely terrible. We need to mulligan for both a Prince John and a 1-drop, and thankfully we do get it here. Similar to how you would aggressively mulligan for Bucky in the Emerald Steel matchup in set 4, you really want to aggressively mulligan for like a Prince John, but hopefully you also find a 1-drop along the way. So we ink one of our 2 brawls and play out the Chernobog Followers, just because, you know, our hand with I think double Rabbit and Be Prepared isn't the greatest. A lot of uninkables there early on. We ink a Bruno and play out a Diablo, taking a look at the opponent's hand, knowing obviously since we're both players that we have a Be Prepared as our song, which is going to play an integral role in how we play out the rest of our this match basically, and how we play our turns. We ink the top deck Teeth and Ambition, so pretty obvious that we top deck that since we didn't have it in our hand when the opponent Diablo'd us. And now we're really in a bad spot if the opponent has a Deceiver, which they do. Not that they would Deceiver right now, so I just go to show you, like, yeah, you ink a Strength, and you would normally think, yeah, let me just Deceiver rip that song, but you actually don't want to do that because you can actually set up a play later on, because, again, the Be Prepared is a dead card in their hand, so you'd actually want to Deceiver rip to Be Prepared once the opponent has drawn through a few more cards. There might be something more relevant to rip, probably not, but the main thing you want to do is set up for a Prince John so that when the Deceiver discards the card, you draw off Prince John as well. Because again, you can afford to wait a long time to rip that Be Prepared, right? We're only on turn 3 now, and that thing can't come out until turn 7. So we opt to develop a Smee instead. On the Ruby Amethyst player side, just because again our hand is a little underwhelming, we're going to quest with the Chernobog Followers first, then opt to banish it and draw a card. And then just pass turn, right, which is not great. We don't want to waste the brawl on a 1-drop Diablo, so we don't really have a play, which is really unfortunate. And this is one of the downfalls of Ruby Amethyst, when you're not able to play nicely on curve here and the other deck is, it's just, and especially when it's a bad matchup for you, it just puts you so far behind. So on turn 3, the Prince John comes down, and this perfectly sets up the snipe play, where you can play Prince John Mirror for 2 and then play Ursula Deceiver for 2 as well on turn 4 with the 4 ink, right? So not great for us. We draw, we ink a goat, and now we're going to be able to start dropping these rabbits, which is good in this matchup potentially, but if you know anything about like set 2, set 3 meta, the Prince John just makes it so that you really don't want to be drawing cards because it's just extra cards for them to discard, and then they get the additional draws off Prince John. And with the additional tools we have to discard cards, like even something like this Bruno, forcing a discard is like triggering the Prince John. It's just really bad. So as expected, we do end up playing the Mirror and the Ursula Deceiver. And the Mirror in this matchup, once again, is just acting as a check that your hand is not going bigger than 3 at this point, and we're going to be aiming to take it down. Like take it down as low as possible once you're on 3, right? Playing Lucifers, playing Sudden Chills, etc. So yeah, it's really bad. Again, being on the play, and despite these rabbit draws, we are on 5 cards, so you know we could potentially make sure that we just end our turn with 3, and this is why I'm opting to play the Maui here and not the rabbit, because the rabbit would lead me back to 4 cards in hand and force a discard, which would mean the Prince John draws a card. So, you know, we Maui the Smee, which isn't the greatest because now we're really susceptible to Let the Storm Rage on the Maui, but we want to make sure we have 3 cards in hand here so we don't end up wanting to draw additional cards that would force us to discard off the Prince John Mirror. So you can see how the Prince John Mirror now forces us into very awkward lines of play because the Maui there isn't really great. I'd rather crash my Cusco into the Smeef, get a draw, and then play a rabbit that turn, have double rabbits on board. But it's just not a good play because I would have more than 3 cards, and then I would be discarding, giving my opponent draws with Prince John. Like, the interaction is absolutely crazy. So here, yeah, as expected, the Leather Storm Ray John comes in, takes out the Maui, and then on another 3 ink, we're able to develop yet another Prince John here. Now we're staring down a rabbit and a Cusco. But because the Prince John mirror only triggers at the end of my opponent's turn, like the opponent who's playing against the mirror, you don't want to make them draw cards too early. So, we'll see what they're on. I mean, I guess you could and then force them to play out multiple interactions or discard their hand, but yeah, it's neither here nor there. So we're going to pay 4 to play another rabbit, and then quest with rabbit and Cusco. We have 4 cards in hand. We have not inked yet, so we're going to ink the Cogsworth and then just pass turn. So again, kind of a suboptimal turn, but these Prince Johns having ward, man, I mean, they took ward off Bucky. Will they take ward off Prince John? I wonder, right? The card is really strong, as you can see here. But yeah, just not having a way to interact with it is just absolutely brutal. So we draw a Bruno, and we're going to Bruno back a rabbit, the readied rabbit. And I believe what will happen here is the discard will happen first. So we end up discarding the Brawl, and then if we want, we can draw a card off of the rabbit. Off of the double Prince John on the Emerald Steel player's board, they are going to be able to draw 2 off of the 1 discard from the opponent's rabbit. Hold on a second. Oh, Sudden Chill. Okay, yeah, Sudden Chill makes me discard. They draw 2 again. I missed drawing off of the rabbit when it got bounced back with the Bruno, so again, a misplay on my end. We draw yet another Sudden Chill. Okay, so we have to discard again. I opt to discard the Elsa, keeping the last rabbit in my hand. We draw 2 off of the double Prince John, and then we draw yet another Sudden Chill. We drew 3 Sudden Chills back to back, as you can see there in the discard pile. So we end up discarding the entire hand, and this is what I was talking about, guys, both in my meta deck video and at the start of this video, when the Prince John mirror forcing you to keep 3 cards in hand at the end of your turn. If I have any kind of further discard engine, like you're just like this is what happens. So not really much to say or do here. The match is over at this point. The Ruby Amethyst player can't really do much to come back. We're going to strength away the rabbit. So we're going to be able to draw 1 during, or we'll just draw 2 when we pass back the turn here. But yeah, I did miss the draw 1 off of the Bruno on the rabbit for sure, which could have made a difference. I mean, in the end, not really, because we just drew double Fox. So we're going to quest with the Cusco, bounce back the Cusco, and replay the Cusco. So 3 for Fox, 2 for Cusco. I'm not going to bother exerting because I know this match is over. We're going to take out one of the 2 Prince Johns. But at this point, it doesn't matter because the opponent has already generated way more than enough advantage. Forget to put the damage counter on the John, but that's okay. We ink the other Fox so that the opponent can't further discard our hand here. The draw of the Beast Tragic Hero is just like, all right, like, yeah, insult to injury here. Yeah, I don't know if this card is absolutely needed, but it definitely is nice as an additional card draw engine. So for 5 and 3 with the 8 ink that we have, we develop both an Ursula Deceiver of All and a Beast Tragic Hero. The opposing Mim Fox, there's the 1 damage on it from challenging the John last turn. I'm thinking what I want to do here, and I'm like, well, I can just afford to stall because next turn my songs will be live with the Ursula Deceiver of All. I'll draw 2 with Beast Tragic Hero. The opponent isn't really threatening anything here. And this is the power of just leaving things unexerted, which is why that new Elsa is so nice, but it's not really that nice into something like Prince John when it has ward, right? Because you can't choose it. So we just go questing, go to, I think, 11 there, and then pass back. The Emerald Steel player is going to draw 2, draw double Diablo. Now we're going to be able to double sing, let the Storm Ray John, take out the Fox, and take out the Cusco here. Absolutely insane. Going to be able to draw 2 from the Ursula Deceiver of All. And you can argue that you don't even want to draw off of the Cusco, but you definitely could have. But at this point, we know the match is over. Yeah, I guess I should have drawn off the Cusco because it could have made this discard a little bit more random, but it didn't matter. Like I said, the match was over a while ago. Bruno away the crap to force the discard. And the reason why you wouldn't want to draw off Cusco is because of this exact thing, Lucifer coming down potentially and discarding the rest of your hand, so it doesn't even matter. Because we still have 5 ink available, which, you know, would just mean that whatever we drew into, we would discard, and then the Prince John will get another draw 2. So, absolutely brutal there. Yeah, we just pay 3 for the Diablo, and we don't even need to use the You're Welcome to draw additional cards or to out a threat from the opponent. And of course, we top deck the Chromacon, and so I just throw it on board in frustration, saying, yep, I have lost. You have an infinite card advantage, so I just pass back the turn, and we know the game is over. So, yeah, let me know what you think of this matchup. Again, deck lists are linked in the description. If you made it this far, thank you again for watching. Quantum is out.